The fastest accelerating Volvo ever made, built proudly in Shah Alam. This is the Volvo EX30 Ultra Twin Performance. Now, the Volvo EX30 CKD is available in two variants, being the Ultra and this, which is the Ultra Twin Performance. Differentiating them is, of course, the powertrain. Now, both cars run the same 69 kilowatt-hour NMC battery, which provides a WLTP range of up to 476 kilometers on the Ultra or 450 kilometers on this Ultra Twin Performance. Now, obviously, in terms of power, there are bigger differences because this Twin Performance puts out up to 428 PS and 543 Newton meters of torque, which means that the Century Sprint in this car can be completed in just 3.6 seconds onward to a top speed of 180 kilometers an hour. Now, in terms of charging, this car will accept AC at up to 11 kilowatts, which means dead to full takes about 8 hours. Whereas for DC charging, this car will accept up to 153 kilowatts, which means a 10 to 80% charge takes a little bit over 28 minutes. Either way, that makes this easily one of the fastest Volvos ever made in terms of acceleration and also in terms of charging. Now, the Volvo EX30 shares its platform with vehicles like the Smart #1 and the Zeekr X, although of the three, the EX30 is easily the smallest. In fact, this is one of the smallest Volvos ever made for that matter. Now, in terms of overall design, I do love the fact the EX30 wears its brand identity very proudly. Up front, you get full LED headlights replete with a Thor's Hammer LED daytime running light signature, which also doubles up as the indicators. And while there is no grille, the iron mark remains very proud on the nose of this car, of course, with the Volvo badge right in the middle. As we move further down, there are some air breathers in order to provide passive cooling for the air conditioning as well as for the batteries themselves. And overall, I do think the front face is quite well sculpted. I also appreciate the fact that this bonnet, for example, is not fully flat, again to make this car look a little bit more distinctive and look a little bit stronger. Now, as we move down the side, rolling stock is handled by a set of 19-inch alloy wheels wrapped in Goodyear efficient grip tires. Now, these are shared between both the Ultra and the Ultra Twin Performance because these are suitably high performance tires. As for the wheel design itself, naturally it runs an aerodynamically efficient design to it, which is again shared between both variants. But as far as I'm concerned, I think these are the least offensive aerodynamic wheels I've ever seen. Now, these wheels being aerodynamic obviously help with the airflow, which is also aided by the air curtain, which is fed in via an inlet on that front bumper in order to reduce the coefficient of drag of this car in order to maximize overall range. That same level of efficiency is leveled at the wing mirrors, which are now frameless, again to reduce the amount of drag created as the car pushes through the wind. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the EX30 is a very small car, which is why, as you can see, there isn't really that much space. This car competes directly against vehicles like the Mini AIMAN, for example, rather than the larger Countryman, which is why its dimensions are the way they are. But I do think that it wears this design very proudly. I love the sculpted body lines down the side, this little bit of contrast paneling down here in order to make the car or to emphasize this car's crossover-y vibes. And of course, I do love this little bit of EX30 badging up here, done up in chrome, again to highlight the fact that this is the newest and smallest Volvo yet. Now, the design language of the EX30 was actually first debuted on the EX90, which has only just arrived in Malaysia. But it's taken a lot of those design traits and then melded into this much smaller form, and I think that it is quite successful. For example, we now have the split tail light design where you have this vertical section up here and this C-clamp section down here, which I think looks very distinctive. I also appreciate the fact there is some Volvo scripting on the side, which is actually illuminated at all times. I also love the fact that instead of a light bar, they've just put these black plastic panels that go all the way across, which create the visual effect you want without, of course, adding the complexity of an actual light. And I do think that, again, this is a very distinctive look, and I love the way the EX30 has been designed. The same goes for the lower bumper, which I think is just busy enough to ensure that this back end doesn't look too plain. However, you would have noticed the fact that this tailgate is quite flat, and the reason for that is because it is to maximize space in the boot. Because while the EX30 is small on the outside, it is big on the inside. There is certainly enough space back here for 4 people's worth of luggage, or 1.5 in a push. And on top of that, despite this flaw, there is actually plenty of space underneath, large enough to fit the charging cables, and this boot floor can actually be lowered in order to improve the vertical space available within the boot, should you need to put luggage bags upwards, for example. And of course, the rear seats also fold flat 60/40 for added practicality, but of course, if you are trying to figure out just how much things, or how many things rather, you can put back here, they've actually provided a nice little diagram here, which says, will it fit? And apparently you can fit a stroller, some luggage bags, a plant, an upright lamp, which I'm pretty sure is from IKEA, and some golf bags. So yeah, small on the outside, big on the inside. Now, the interior of the EX30 is a masterclass in packaging, because while this car is again very diminutive in size, it does reveal a lot of space in here. For example, this dash is set very low in order to improve outward visibility, and being sat here, it feels airy. I don't feel like I'm hemmed in at all. On top of that, the use of materials in here have also been structured in such a way in order to emphasize the space in this car. So for example, you have a lot of horizontal elements like this blue panel down here, which stretches from one end of the dash to the other, bookended by the vertical air conditioning vents, which even come with a piece of blue Perspex-y kind of material, which I think looks like cut glass and looks fantastic. You also have the Harman Kardon soundbar in the front, which stretches again the full width of the car to emphasize the width in here. And you even have chrome elements here, real chrome elements here, in order to break up the monotony of the door card, which again I think is very successful. The same goes for the center console, where you have a wireless charging pad there, yes, and of course you do have some additional storage down here because obviously there is no gearbox. However, by opening the bottom of the storage lid, you will find even more storage underneath, which means you can hide stuff. Your USB-C ports live down here. Cup holders are also a push-to-reveal affair, where just pushing here reveals no less than 2 cup holders. And if you don't want them as cup holders, you can actually move this top part aside in order to reveal or remove the cup holder system itself, which I think is just really intelligent packaging. The same goes for the glove box, because in order to maximize the space for the front passenger, they've moved the glove box into a much easier to reach area, which is here. Now, on the one hand, it's not that big, but on the other hand, it is very easy to reach for both front occupants, which means that I, for example, can actually use this more reliably on a day-to-day basis, which is really, really helpful. However, in the pursuit of maximizing space by minimizing intrusion, they've also minimized a few other things which I'm not too big a fan of. For example, this large portrait-style screen, which runs Android Automotive, or Google Automotive rather, sits very proud on the dash on a fantastic screen, and it is very, very snappy. The graphics here are great, it renders very quickly, and more importantly, this is an always connected system, which means that you can use your Waze, Google Maps and Spotify built into this system without having to use your phone. However, like a Tesla, this is the only screen you have. I have no heads-up display, I have no instrument cluster, which means that when I'm looking for my speed, my consumption, even my indicators, it's here. And it's even stupider because this is also where this car shows off its ADAS functionality, its ability to perceive the world around it. And again, it is visible only from here in a box that's probably about that big. Now, if I'm looking here, I'm not going to avert my gaze here just to make sure that the car can see things. And more importantly, if the car doesn't see something here, I won't know about it unless I look here. That's not that smart. On top of that, Mini has negated this by offering the heads-up display as standard in Malaysia, but apparently that's not an option on the EX30 in any market, which is irritating. The next issue has to do with some more physical controls. The fact there's no volume knob is already one issue, but the second issue is actually to do with the window controls, because they live here, including the lock and unlock buttons here. And the eagle-eyed among you may notice that there are only 2 controls for the windows, and that's because if you want to control the ones in the rear, you have to press rear first and then hit the button. Now, this is really unintuitive, and on top of that, these buttons are so small, surely they could have fit on this armrest here. I have no understanding as to why this is the better way to do it. Although I'm pretty sure someone at Volvo will tell me that it helps to move the conversion from left to right and make that a little bit more affordable. But I don't think affordability is what I should be thinking about in my compact luxury crossover. What does cross the mind of some buyers within this segment is sustainability, and the EX30 is very, very big on that. For example, all of the material that you see here, as well as here on the door, these are all made from recycled plastic. The same goes for this denim-like material up here, which is apparently made of recycled water bottles, and even this material that's used for the seats, these are not leather. This is some kind of material that feels a little bit like a wetsuit, but overall it does look good and it does feel quite plush. And the stitching, for example, all the creases and so on, it is built to the same Volvo quality that we have come to love, which means all of this is still very positive, even if this isn't luxury as you expect it to be. Now, because this is the Ultra variant, there are a couple of things I'd like to point out. Firstly, there is a standard fit panoramic sunroof in this car, but no sunblind. The second matter is the fact that you do have your HVAC controls that live in here. Now, talking about the screen, this layout and setup of this is perhaps the most intuitive I've seen yet for an all-in-the-screen type system, although again, you still need to fettle around with this for some other stuff. So for example, adjusting your temperature, that's a double tap affair. Adjusting your fan speed, that's a double tap affair. The most annoying thing, however, is the fact that if you're trying to adjust your follow distance on the pilot assist system, that's in the screen. Now, admittedly, from the home screen, that is a 1, 2, 3, 4 tap affair, but that is still 4 taps too many, particularly given the fact that there is actually space on the steering wheel controls to have manipulated that function. God damn it. Now, Volvo has done their best to maximize the space in the front to make this car feel like a much more airy and spacious vehicle, but not much could have been done back here because you can't fight physics. So with the front seats out in my driving position, about 170 centimeters, you can see I have a decent amount of knee room and a pretty decent amount of headroom, no doubt as a result of not having a sunblind for this panoramic roof. However, you can see that I have no under-thigh support, and because the front seats are mounted quite low, there isn't really that much space tucking my feet in underneath the seat in front of me. Now, if there were 4 people in this car, so that means 2 rear passengers, then life wouldn't be so bad, I think. But if you try and fit 3 back here, yeah, it's going to be a bit of a struggle despite that flat floor. On top of that, amenities back here are quite minimal as well. There's a small cubby here, big enough for half of my phone, as well as a couple of USB-C ports, and of course, the window controls are once again mounted in the center console. However, I do not have pockets in the backs of the seats for whatever reason. I only have a decently sized pocket here, big enough for a liter-sized bottle perhaps, and I have no center armrest. This, I think, is a huge miss. But more importantly, because space back here is somewhat at a premium, you have to be kind of smart with how you set things up. It also makes it slightly worse if you're trying to fit a child seat, because I imagine that a bulky rear-facing child seat will be a bit of a challenge in this car, not only as a result of this car's diminutive size, but also the relatively small openings of the door. However, a forward-facing child seat should be just fine. On top of that, because I have no rear air conditioning vents, it does also mean that thanks to, again, this sunroof and the relatively large windows, it might get hot back here. Now, the thing about the EX30 is that they are marketing this car to very young families and, of course, dual income households with no children. This is a very much designed to be a yuppie car. And you know what yuppies love? A great driving experience. Now, when I say yuppies, I don't mean it in a derogatory sense. It just means that you're young and up and coming. And so when you're looking for a car that sort of expresses some degree of status and some degree of success, naturally, a Volvo like this might come to your attention. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we are driving the Ultra Twin Performance, which means that this EX30 is the fastest accelerating Volvo of all time. Now, the fact that you pair that to what is also one of the smallest Volvos ever made, it means that this thing takes off like a bloody rocket. Now, the 0 to 100 time of 3.6 seconds makes it faster than the BYD Seal. It makes it just a little bit slower, in fact, than the MG Cyberster, which means that this is, again, a properly fast little machine. However, aside from the speed, what actually stands out more than anything else is actually the refinement in this car. Because more often than not, when you buy a compact luxury anything, be it a A-Class saloon or a 218 Grand Coupe, you will notice that a lot of noise gets into the cabin, because you'd expect that some corners would be cut in order to fit a certain price point. But in this EX30, whatever corners that were cut had nothing to do with refinement, because this car is incredibly quiet. Not just at urban speeds, as I'm doing now, about 74 kilometers an hour, but even out on the motorway doing 110, 120 kilometers an hour, maybe even faster still. Not that I do that. But this car is so incredibly refined. It means that even though this car is small, this is still something that you could very easily take over a long distance trip if you want to. And then of course there's the driving experience itself, because beyond that, this car is so brilliantly calibrated. The suspension, for example, the primary ride in this car is excellent, providing good body control, and it allows for a good degree of composure no matter the road surface. However, the secondary ride, in terms of when you actually hit potholes and stuff like that, it's not so floaty as to isolate everything from the cabin, which also means that as a result, as a driver, you actually know what the hell is going on with your car. But more importantly, it just takes off the worst edge of the lumps and bumps, which means that at no point do you ever feel uncomfortable in an EX30. This is, again, despite the fact this car runs on 19-inch alloy wheels, hardly small by any measure, but it just makes this car so easy to live with that it's just excellent, no matter how you slice it. And then, of course, being a Volvo, there is the matter of safety. The EX30 is provided with the IntelliSafe suite of active safety features, which include everything under the sun, as well as pilot assist, which is essentially level 2 semi-autonomy, aided of course by the driver monitoring system cameras that live right up ahead. Now, the fact that this car offers them is perhaps not too surprising. Lots of cars offer level 2 semi-autonomy these days. However, because this is a Volvo, the polish with which these systems have been executed is truly bar none. Because this car is so dependable and so reliable that when you're in a traffic jam, you really do feel like the car will do everything for you. It can't, and you still have to pay attention, but it feels as if the car will do everything for you. So that means that it doesn't matter if you're in a motorway journey or if you're just stuck in traffic, this car feels truly effortless to live with. However, there are a couple of things about this car, well, 3 things about this car that I'm not a big fan of. Number 1, the lack of the instrument cluster does mean that once again I have to look towards the central screen for any form of information with regards to the car, and that is just not very intuitive. Secondly, I would have really appreciated a sunblind, because even though this is UV coated and blah blah blah, after about 3 or 4 hours, the top of your head will slowly start to cook. This is not good. And thirdly, and perhaps more irritatingly, is the fact that this infotainment screen, while it does offer wireless Apple CarPlay, it does not offer Android Auto. Now, to the best of my ability, I haven't been able to ascertain as to whether or not Android Auto is coming as part of a future software update, because we have seen this Google Automotive system in Volvos run Android Auto wirelessly. However, based on the point of review today, it doesn't offer Android Auto. And I find that particularly irritating, because it does mean that if I want to continue using Waze and Spotify and whatever, I am beholden to Volvo in order to ensure that the data on this car remains active. Now, while that is included in the first 5 years, as is servicing, which means that essentially you just buy and drive for the first 5 years, unfortunately, once that time is up, you will have to pay them a subscription fee in order to keep your car connected. Now, the reason why that is a problem for me is because if I've already bought a car, the last thing I want is to have to keep paying for it after I've already paid all of the repayments and bank loans and whatever. I already own the car. Why should I pay you any more money beyond that? If I don't want to service it with you, that should be my choice. And the same thing goes with keeping these connected systems on. And so I certainly hope that Volvo Car Malaysia, if not Volvo Global, will include Android Auto wirelessly in the EX30 in a future software update, because if not, that is to me a very big question mark. But once you put all of those things into consideration, the EX30 is an excellent little city car. For people with no kids, or for people that very rarely use the rear seats, this car is excellently packaged. There's lots of space, there are lots of intelligent touches about the place, and everything is built to a degree that you would have come to expect from Volvo. Nothing creaks, nothing rattles, no matter how fast you're driving or no matter how big the pothole. This car feels like a proper premium experience, which is exactly what you'd expect, given the fact that this car is pushing about 230,000 ringgit. However, if you are looking for a similar package, but perhaps something that is a little bit larger, a bit more accommodative of people in the back, be them children or adults, then consider the smart #1 and #3, which are broadly the same price, offer broadly the same performance, while offering a few more conventional niceties such as space and a digital instrument cluster. However, if you want something that is electric for you to do only urban driving in, and you want something that is truly style forward, not that this is a bad looking car by any measure, then also consider the Mini Cooper Electric, because that is a car that we absolutely love here on the channel. And then although that car also has this whole central screen nonsense, at least it comes with Android Auto, although you will have to pay extra for level 2 semi-autonomy. So all things considered, I do think that this Volvo EX30 is an excellent package, the sort of thing that is, again, very easy to live with if you're looking for a compact electric crossover to do primarily urban driving. This is an excellent little car, and it is something that I would happily live with on a day-to-day basis if it had a heads-up display. In any case, that concludes our review of the Volvo EX30 Ultra Twin Performance CKD. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon to notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. All the links are in the description below, including the link to join our new WhatsApp channel. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care, stay safe, and jangan bodoh.